I want to say welcome to Emmy Garzitto. Welcome, Emmy.
Hey, welcome. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you. And I just want to jump into it today with all the interaction we've been having. We're running a little late, so over to you.
So, today we're going to be talking about conflict resolution for founders and investors, and we're going to look and pay special attention to working with uncertainty for both groups of individuals. Just to give you a quick idea about who I am, Dr. Amy Garzitto. I'm a conflict coach. I call myself a conflict alchemist because my jam is helping communities get to the place where conflict becomes a tool for transformation. I'm an author. I have my own podcast called Can't We All Just Get Along? Because those words drive me all the time in terms of looking at how do we connect and communicate better, and how do we stay in the room and get all the juicy bits of learning that are there for us when we stay in the room when conflict arises. So that's me. Uh, as I said, today I'm going to look at managing conflicts between investors and founders. I'm going to look at some of the research that we have, some of the brain research, especially from a neurobiology and an evolutionary biology point of view. And I'm going to look at ways we manage uncertainty. And then I'll give you a couple of free resources and free further information. So, okay, the first part of this is going to be, what do we do to manage conflict between founders and investors? So I want to start by hearing from you. What are the common tensions that exist between founders and investors? What are your current worries and thoughts or edges of conflict that you notice?
Yeah, so I'll reach into the chat room for that, but I see a lot of tension between co-founders where mismanaged expectations. They're 6 months or a year into a project, and people are participating at levels not what they expected, and so there's a lot of potential fallout, around control and ownership there. Also, seeing a lot of tension between investors and founders around performance and direction, specifically with control or direction of their company.
Okay, that sums up some good ones. Are there any other ones that are coming through?
Hey, Amit, Anatoly, Chad, Justin, Naima, do you have any other founder investor tensions that you can think of and share with us? Remuneration. Founder remuneration. How much money should I make? Thank you, Amit.
Okay. Is any other burning desires there? Or are we
A liquidation of assets or liquidation event, sorry.
mhm.
Sometimes tension happens because co-founders don't meet. They live in separate countries.
Right? So what I'm hearing is resources, assets, the allocation of assets, whether that be time, energy, or money, as a big tension point, as well as misunderstanding of the roles in communication, what I was expecting you to do, and over time, what you're delivering. So
Yeah, I would
time,
agree.
time being an asset as well, or a source. So before the conflict, before we get to actually have the moment of tension, there are some there's a setup. There's always a setup that happens. And here are some of the premises that I have that I'm going to speak to based on some of the research that I've done. So founders care about the idea. They're connected and passionate. It's their baby. They own it. It's a part of them, and there's a deep connection around the idea. Investors care about the person who's going to be able to take the idea to the next level. So a founder is thinking about their baby, their idea that is deeply connected with them. And the investor is looking at, is this person that I am going to potentially invest my time, money, and talent, do they have the chops to take it to the next level? And can I trust them? Is there a level of trust that allows me to say, this person is someone I'm willing to invest in? So investors ask questions fueled by the need for certainty around their business pain points. And they're asking, is a founder able to address those underlying business pain points? And again, the pain points come directly from their notion that, can I trust this person to take my money, to take my knowledge and information and give me a return? Can I trust this person to give me a return on my investment? So trust develops when the founder is able to anticipate those investor pain points. So there's two things that are happening. That you build trust by anticipating the questions of the investor and anticipating their pain points. At the same time, you have to know what your pain points are and you have to manage them. The problem comes when we think this is all in our head, cognitive, that we just have to have the right information. We just have to be prepared to answer all the questions. But pain points, conflict, trust, all exist inside our nervous system. It exists in our bodies. So those internal aren't information. They're about how you feel and how you make the other person feel. So it's not just about the information. Okay, so the idea versus the person driving the idea are two different tensions. You can say that unless you are addressing those different points of view, you are talking over each other. You are talking two different languages. So what I want to offer here are some strategies on how you get to the sage, how and manage and the trust essentially of the investor if you are a founder, and how, as an investor, how do you gauge if this is the right fit for you? How do you gauge, can I trust what they say? Because every time you are talking, the other person is having a feeling about what you're saying. And if they don't match, there's going to be an immediate level of trust. And it happens on a level that's not here in your head. It happens on a level that is inside your body. And we have to get very good at managing all that internal system inside our bodies. Okay. So so I just gave you a big chunk of lunka information. I'm going to take a moment here, and I'm going to start with the first strategy you need to think about. And I just wrote a terrible word. I wrote feelings. And the reality is that feelings drive our moral compass. How we behave, what we think is conflict is all driven inside our body, inside our nervous system, and it's the signals are those feelings. So first of all, if you can manage your feelings, you have the potential to hold the power in the room. If you are able to manage your own internal nervous system, you have a huge advantage. So let me talk about that advantage. Number one, there's something called stress contagion. Stress contagion means If I'm upset or nervous, I affect everybody else in my sphere. I pretend like I'm or not. The power you have, the more social capital you have, the more influential your feelings are on the people around you. So if you handle your nervous system, if you are able to manage your fear, your tensions, you are able to calm the nervous system of everybody in your room. And when you do that, you are able to engage your prefrontal cortex, your thinking, so that you are not talking about taking care of your body and your feelings. You are able to talk about what is best. You are able to discern and gauge the room and use the most juiciest part of your brain to do the thinking, and it remains in the room. So stress contagion, uh, lowering the temperature in the room, all of these ideas are incredibly powerful. So the second piece of this is the do your homework. Now, everyone is going to do their homework around the data. Everyone is going to be uber prepared about what are the potential setbacks, what is my timeline. You're going to anticipate the questions of your investors when you're making the pitch. But the other part of the homework you need to do is you need to anticipate the feelings, because those drive the decisions around how I feel about you. Do I trust you? Do I like you? Right. So the way that you anticipate the feelings is you're looking for those pain points. Yours, they're critical. Like what's going to set you off? What's problematic for you? What's an attack that potentially will take where you might get set off? So know what your pain points are. Know what drives you to a trigger. And then the second thing is anticipate, practice, rehearse the pain points of your investor. And all of this needs to be done prior to the meeting. So I'm assuming everybody here is going to do the homework around what are the questions that I need to answer? What is it about my product that I need to know exact information about? How can I calm the fears of my potential investor? The other part of the homework is, what are the potential pain points? What are my potential pain points? And what do I need to do to manage those and prepare for those should they arise during the presentation or the pitch or the meeting? Okay, that's a big chunk of information. Do I need to slow this down? Does somebody have a question about this?
Well, I've got a couple of quick questions, and we'll reach out to the chat room. You're putting a lot of information out here, and it's great to say control your emotion in the room, but is there a technique you can share with us to, when somebody says something that hurts or you haven't anticipated, that you can quickly let it go to return to your normal?
Absolutely, and I'll be talking about those.
Okay.
And I'm Italian, so my way of dealing or being taught how to manage all these feelings was death by pummeling. So I've had to learn all these skill sets myself. So I am aware that it's easier said than done, and that's why we have to train and practice. I will talk about some of those skill sets as we move farther into the workshop. And I have tons of resources and ideas on my website. So my blog contains cheat notes on past presentations and strategies, lots of strategies around, what you need to do.
Yeah, and when you're at here, we are talking about do your homework. You should know your pain points as a founder, and if you're covering them up, then that's going to be a problem. But if you're, coming at it saying, "Listen, this is a problem. Can you help us?" Or, we've solved all these other things, but this one's still, you get a different kind of relationship. So I think, knowing them and being able to deal with it. And as an example for some of this is, I run an accelerator program, and a lot of times after one of the things I make our students do is within the first couple of weeks, they go out to our startup drinks and they pitch. Though they pitch in front of the crowd and then get feedback from everybody, and inevitably one or two people come up to me afterwards and said, "Do you know what that jerk said? Blah 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 blah." And so they rant and they're so mad. And the next day I go back to it and said, "Okay, now how do we answer that person?" Right? So you have to be ready and you have to feel that pain sometimes. So it's easy to be prepared on paper, but maybe sometimes you need someone to say those things to you in order to be able to respond to them.
Yeah, and Craig, that is exactly the point. What happened there is most likely that there was a trigger. There was something that was said that was a pain that has absolutely nothing to do with the product, the person, or the pitch. Our triggers happen when we very, very early. And it's not that you have to psychoanalyze yourself and find out what your father did when you were 5 to figure that out. But you need to know that place exists, and then you've got to work at the skills that work for you and your body and your nervous system so that you don't end up responding. And what you offered him, Craig, was first of all the awareness, and then the ability to say, what are you going to do next time? And then just sort of to jump ahead, all of that, because it's in our nervous system, in our body, requires rehearsal. We can't just think about it. We actually have to do it in our bodies and practice hearing the words and saying out loud and doing our response. So in a nutshell, that's a teaser around some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
And there's one other question. What happens, in a co-founder relationship if one of the co-founders doesn't want to do the homework? There is, it sounds like there'll always be pain there.
Well, and again, it really depends. My response would be different depending on the relationship, because the relationship is key. And what I would say to somebody in that space is the most powerful way to change someone's behavior is you change yours. So you facing someone and managing your nervous system helps teach somebody else how to manage their nervous system. So again, the power of managing you is that you're also training other people to do the right thing by just doing it. And that all happens outside our cognition, right? If I am, I don't know, if I'm moving my body from side to side and just moving my hands as a way to get rid of my energy that comes out of my nervous system as a result of somebody saying something that triggers an outburst, I'm showing that person's nervous system how to manage itself. So the first thing I would do is coach the person who wants to be coached, give them strategies, have them do it all the time in front of their founder, and go from there.
It's great advice. I'll stop interrupting you.
Craig, no, I love interruptions. Just as long as my computer continues to work. Oh, it's moving. Good. Okay, so we've talked about the pain points, and now I'm saying listen to them. So when somebody has an outburst, our nervous system goes into protection mode, and we still think every threat is a physical threat. So our nervous system response won't be helpful when somebody comes at us with words or an insult or a pain that is about our feelings. So our job is to actually calm our nervous system enough so that we can see what's behind the question. So if we learn to address the worry first and then respond with the facts and the evidence second, we go farther into addressing the real pain point. So remember, a pain point's in our body, it's not in our cognition. It's not a fact here, but we will say a fact, we will ask a question that is about cognition, and underneath it is our worry. So again, this is about thinking about anticipating the worry, anticipating the story that's behind the pain point. What does this look like? When somebody says something that is painful to you, your first job is going to be to slow it down and just manage your nervous system. And for some people, that might just be moving their body from side to side, or taking a breath, or looking away, and then buying some time by repeating what you heard. And while you are managing that nervous system, your next point, and hopefully if you've done the homework, is to try to address what is underneath. So that might be, do I trust you? Do I think you have the chops to move the product or pivot this product in a way that is better for the market? Do you have the ability to manage those different shifts and changes? What kind of risk are you willing to take? So listening to the pain points is your next task. This is key. When somebody's in a state of a high arousal, when they're angry, excited, frustrated, when they've got a lot of energy in their body, their prefrontal cortex isn't working. So this isn't the right time to address the concerns. When somebody has upset you, like, for example, Craig, you talked about this guy who was upset by one of the questions or comments that somebody had given him. The right time for him to maybe go back and say, hey, I'm just curious, you mentioned this, what do you mean by that? I just want some more information, I want to learn from this, isn't when he's upset and in that high state of arousal. It's after he's had the ability to calm his own nervous system and come back in a position of curiosity to help learn and understand more about that person.
Yeah, and usually that's why I wait till the next day or so, because they're
Mm-hmm.
heated that night and they have to think it through. And then you go back to say, they're not going to be the last person to say that, so.
Uh, Thanks, Craig. Anything else?
The crowd is pretty quiet right now.
Okay. So I just said, what else? Anything else? Am I missing something? These are powerful questions. So if you feel there's some unsettled feelings, and if you don't know what the pain point is, if you've made some guesses, but it's still not where you think it's at, you can say, what else? Am I missing something? Coming into a place where you are asking for more information is incredibly useful. And what we found is that sometimes just pausing and letting them talk and holding silence is a fantastic way to root out what the real concerns are. When it comes to feelings, when it comes to vulnerability, people will usually say the most important thing at the end. So, what else? Am I missing something? Is a way of trying to get to that last bit. Usually, the very end of a presentation, the very end of a conversation, where if you pause and wait, the wonder, the sort of the niggling worry comes out at the end. And when you use these words, what else? Am I missing something? Is there something else I need to know that hasn't been said yet? You are allowing that last little bit of information to come out. It's valuable for you, and it's valuable for the person saying that information too. And that last bit of story around a feeling or a vulnerability is a fantastic piece of information that will allow you to build trust if you are able to address it, even if you're able to just listen to it and be present, and then think about how to address it another time. That is over time going to build that trust, that connection, which over time gives you, it buys you more leeway. It buys you more ability to take risks or move over to the edges. Because the more trust you have, the more leeway you get in working towards the edges. So my what else is that the work as a founder is to work at disengaging from your idea. Although we behave as if we are the idea, I am the idea, this is me. If you say something about my product, you are defaming my name. We are able to separate the idea with who we are, the easier it will be to listen to the change, to find directions, to find ways of making those pivots. And then my second what else is, when we go into these conversations, we want to play the long game. We don't want to just solve the problem or make the pitch for today. We want to think about, this is going to be my future investor. I need to signal that I am passionate, that I'm knowledgeable, I'm committed, I'm able to innovate. I need to signal to this person that I'm trustworthy. What are those things that I can do to let this person know I'm trustworthy? Those are the what else's. If you think about, you are not your idea, and every time I go into a room and have a meeting or a pitch, it's not about this moment, it's about playing the long game. Can I build a relationship? Can I practice teaching people to trust me? Can I practice telling you my idea, being prepared with my idea, but even more, I have the ability to manage my nervous system so that I can stay aware and focused in a room. And I have the ability to listen and pay attention to the feelings and the nervous systems in the room, not just my own. Okay, I am now going to kind of shift it over to managing this uncertainty. What are our strategies? Does Craig, is there any other piece about this last section that I need to meander through?
No, I think you're going to cover a bunch of this stuff. Like I think you're like tackling it all. I'm just it's hard when you are all coming at it from different points of view, whether you're the investor or the founder or co-founder or something, and one of the group isn't acting the way you think they are, and without managing that expectation, and that you're now in a situation of uncertainty. So how do you, one, manage that when they're not meeting expectations, and two, start those conversations when they won't react the way we've been talking about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and it always comes out for me that the most power we have is our capacity to manage ourselves. And that's where we need to start. What we know about research in our current research is that it's far that influence is far greater than we thought. It's much more like when I was doing my research for my PhD, uh, and from what we know now, it's significant the amount of research that is now out there that says my internal nervous system affects people in the room. Like the role of stress contagion is not little, it's huge. And it affects our ability to learn, it affects our ability to listen, it affects our ability to be healthy. It affects our long-term outcomes. This is something that managing our nervous systems has a huge impact on our well-being. I'm going to pivot, so I'm going to move over here and talk about what are the current strategies. So what do you do to manage uncertainty? What do you currently do to manage your uncertainty?
Me? I'll tell you
Craig,
what.
you and everybody, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll ask the people in the room, what do you do? For me, I am what I call the bull in a china shop. I just blurt it out. I pull the band-aid off quick and deal with it, because um, I'm old enough to have known that, by skulking around, you're not going to get the answers. So I try and get everyone together who's involved and just say, here it is. I think this is a problem. Anybody else think this is a problem?
Okay, great.
And not everybody's like that, and not everybody appreciates that that approach, because they don't necessarily. It becomes an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, and sometimes very uncomfortable for myself. But it by opening it up to everybody, and everybody sees that the uncertainty is there, I'm hoping that we can all come to the same clarity.
I like it, Craig. What
Anybody else
else?
in the room have any ideas how you manage uncertainty? We do our research in markets and all that kind of stuff. Naima says she talks about it.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
gonna just
Saint Ike
go
says
right
he
through.
does about the same thing I do. Goes at it straight. And Yassine says she tried to say it to herself, that it's normal,
Hmm.
that it's okay to
Mm,
be uncertain.
nice. What else?
That's all we have so far.
Okay, so I'm just gonna just move through
Yep.
here. What are your current strategies? So again, you can pivot an idea, but you can't pivot the conflict. So um, it's much harder, but it is the way to go in terms of your conflict is something you can change in, so, but it has to be you. So it's not going to go anywhere. The conflict, the trigger, none of that's going to go anywhere unless you do something about it. And so it's within your power. You have the power to do something about that piece. Now, the problem here is, of course, that we struggle to do that. It's painful. We have a culture that works really heavily in terms of distraction. So if I'm feeling pain, it's okay for me to be distracted. So we're getting less and less practice at actually managing our conflict. And that becomes problematic. So again, I'm coming back to, we have different pain points. The investors have pain points that are different from the founders. And pain, again, it's driven by our nervous systems, right? So again, it's in our body. And this is what our brain favors. It favors doing, it favors repetition, short interventions, and body-based. So what we do every day is far more effective than what we do once in a while. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be short. And it has to be integrated with what we're doing in our body. So our body is key in addressing all of that discomfort. In terms of evolutionary biology, and Craig, you mentioned this right off the top, and we're seeing an increase of people struggling to manage their nervous systems. Our brain grew when we did three things. Like, and when I say our brain, I'm talking about that prefrontal cortex, our decision making, our ability to look into the future, our compassion, all of that's is the last thing that is evolved in our brain. And it evolved, we were moving. So in the last 60,000 years of Homo sapiens sapien, we moved tremendous amounts. Like, we populated the earth in a very, very short period of time. So we moved, we ate protein and fat, and that built up our prefrontal cortex and our nervous systems. And we survived by living in community. We survived by living in tribes. We weren't the fastest, and we weren't the strongest. And what happened is our survival was dependent on collectives. And so our brain favors collectives. So moving every day, like moving whole muscle groups and learning what ways to move that work best when you have an uncomfortable feeling. Eating protein and fat as opposed to carbs, and refined foods and refined carbs, such as white flour and sugar. Our brain doesn't use that as food. It doesn't see that as food. It behaves more like a drug. So so that doesn't even count when I'm talking about food. So protein and fat helps our brains. It helps our nervous systems, moving, and then connecting with others. So that could be your family, your partners. It could be your workplace community. It is on us to make sure that we build and nurture our communities, and our nervous systems require that. We need to see people's faces. We need to move and be around other people. Just connecting, just having another body beside me will calm my nervous system. So they're so basic, we think, whatever. But the fact is, we do less of this, and COVID has given us less scaffolding around movement. Our food choices, because we're stuck at home, have been about comfort foods, and comfort foods don't always help us in terms of our nervous system and our brain and thinking. And in fact, there's research around carbs being part of not just about diabetes, but inflammation in the brain. So we're seeing issues around cognitive development now happening not just with aging adults, but with children. So it's an important tool in your arsenal. What I eat makes a difference on how I manage my conflict and how I take care of others. And then getting as much practice as you can, getting moments of being with others, ideally with as much closeness as we can get. And if we don't get that, even connecting by phone or by a visual like Zoom is still better than nothing. So those are the three places where we have to think about our strategies. And again, it's small things repeated over and over that have the greatest impact on our systems. Okay, so I am close to the end here. So what I want to do is I'm going to skip this, and I don't know if you are able to, Craig, I'm happy to pass this on if people want this information. However, next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, I'm offering a free webinar, and I will have a lot more of this information. I'll have more strategies, and this is specifically focusing around strategies in the pandemic workplace.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the emails of everybody who registered for this course, so you can actually email them the link and the information. So everyone here, you can get that directly, so you know they can contact you and follow that. We do have some questions here if you're interested.
Sure.
I, um, how do you manage your nervous system and nervous system's response in movement? You know, when it seems you must respond to a conflict initiator and you don't seem to have the time or ability or option to step away. Like if you're in a closed sort situation, you can't step outside, say, you just made me mad, give me a second, I'm going to run 10 flights of stairs and then come back to you. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so they can be big or small. So the more around, like the angry you are, the less you need to talk. So if you're really upset, you want to go say, I'm really angry. I can't talk right now. I'm going to get back to you, and get out and move your big muscle groups, because right at that moment, your ears have shut down. Your thinking is shut down, and what you need to do is dissipate all those chemicals coursing through your body that think the saber-toothed tiger is coming at it. You need to get you that should be a trained response. The second thing that I would say to this is that, if you're upset about something, there's a lot of small things that you can do. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, that really pisses me off. I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks right now, and then I'm going to talk to you. It doesn't have to look like that. There are internal things that you can do on the side. And like, for me, I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I am moving my feet from side to side. I've got a lot of energy in my hands, and they'll be at the side. But you need to find ways to manage that in your body. And they can be slight and small. It can, and if you notice, when people are angry, they are intuitively finding ways to get rid of that energy. Your job is to do it in a focused way. And the key is that the more you train your body to do this when it's calm, the better it will be at doing it when it's in a high state of arousal. Ideally, you are rehearsing and practicing strategies on how to regulate yourself when you are in a calm state. If you're waiting for the moment when you have the least resources to do the right thing, you have the least likelihood to have that happen. If you practice and train and rehearse for those moments, and that is my argument to you. I think every one of you should practice and train and rehearse your nervous systems as much as you are practicing training your pitch, because you are going to be judged by how you make people feel. And the better you are able to manage your feelings, no matter the more successful your pitch is going to be.
Would you suggest, an internal script in this kind of situation where you're like, can we table that for a later moment? I've been thinking about that, and I needs further discussion. But right now, we want let's move to the next topic or something like that to kind of move. Is there a script you can write yourself to kind of take that topic away for now, and not physically?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, there are some of those strategies are in some of the articles that I have on my website. But essentially, it is good to have one or two pieces of scripts that you're used to using, and it less is more, because when you're in a high state and everyone's in a high state, they can't hear anyway. So, I see you're upset, and I want to be thoughtful about how I address you. So I'm going to get back to you. I got to think about this.
And you really need to have a couple of those in your back pocket. Like I've done a lot of live events, and I've got a couple of go tos that just come up at the last moment. But some things throw you for a loop, and you're like someone says something or a question or whatever, and you're in front of 50, 100, or more people, and all of a sudden you blank. So you need to
Mm-hmm.
have something to be able to come back. So whether you're pitching or whether you're talking to investors, having those scripts, because one, it centers you and gets you back to the place you were, because someone will say something funny or whatnot, and you're completely lost where you were. I've emotionally, you could be mad, you could be happy, you could be whatever, and now you got to get back to the place so you can deliver what you need to.
Yeah. And so here's another tip. If somebody throws a trigger at you, you immediately will forget, and you go in your back brain. And so this is a moment where you can just uh, paraphrase, say, Craig, I'm not sure I got this, but I'm going to say back to you what I think you've just said to me. You're wondering why my shirt size is medium and I should be wearing a large. Is that what you're saying, Craig? And so I'm just making this up, obviously, but it is the paraphrase slows you down and helps you get back into your prefrontal cortex. And then what inevitably will happen is that Craig will talk, the person that you've just paraphrased is going to talk some more and either say more about what you've just said or confirm what you've just said. And then it's entirely okay to say that that's a question I want to answer very carefully, put some thought into. I'm going to get back to you. What are you doing tomorrow at 9 o'clock? Right. So just be clear. Make sure you understand what that person says. And again, the trigger is probably the feeling behind whatever the person is saying. And it's your triggers are old, and your job is to manage you, and then carefully listen to the information and then follow through.
Yeah, and it's managing that your emotion in the situation so you can always look at the positive side of things. Somebody in an investor or co-founder situation might be saying something negative, but usually it's because we're trying to get to a positive outcome. So if you try and not be emotionally invested, like you were hinting at, you're emotionally invested in your idea, and most startups I know are emotionally invested in an idea, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes a long time for them to kind of sit back and understand that when you start with an idea, most startups, that idea evolves several times over its life. And a startup isn't an idea. A startup is an organization in search of a repeatable business model.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you're sticking to this idea, and your investors or your
Mm-hmm.
co-founders or your consumers are showing you a different route, you really have to open your eyes. So agree, investors want to know that you're going to step up, and that you see that vision, and that you hear them and can adapt, and either um, come back with reasons why you're not doing what they said, or a plan to implement that kind of thing. So, and without emotionally being charged.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you another tip of something that I would do, and that is share your long game before you go into the meeting. So the purpose of my meeting with you is to make sure that we're still working together in a year's time and that we will feel good about the decision we're going to make. So when you share your long game, you are telling your brain and the person you're having the discussion with your intention that is farther out into the future. And when we're thinking farther out into the future, that calms our nervous system, because ultimately, again, we are people who have learned how to live, to thrive, but because we're in groups. So if I say, hey, I'm going to be with you in a year's time, I'm managing that person's certainty and uncertainty level. So again, share your long game would be another strategy. Start right off the bat saying what what the intention is over time as to why you're having this conversation today.
Yeah, and if you can, try and start with some sort of common ground. And that sounds easier or sounds harder than it is, I think potentially. For example, I'm a cyclist, and a lot of times, we get in. I won't say heated because I don't get heated, but you get in close situations with vehicles,
Oh yeah,
and my mantra is, I don't want to be hit, and you don't want to hit me. So if we could start there,
yeah,
I'm not doing
right.
anything. Yeah, if we can start there, we can move to a better place.
Yeah.
So I understand that I may have messed something up, or maybe you might have messed something up. But yeah, if you can set that kind of common ground, we're trying to make this a successful relationship. That we want to enjoy each other's company when we get together, and that we're focused on moving our company or our product forward. So any conflict, any feedback is constructive, not critical.
Hmm. Right. And in what you've just done, Craig, in terms of looking for common ground in your example, you've just linked each other to community. Like inside our brains, you've just made a link in your brain that has said, he is with me, he's part of my tribe. And that immediately that helps us, right? Because we are, we cannot eliminate millions of years of training and evolution. And so when we work with it and find ways to make our hardwired body work with us, then we are more likely to find success.
So, how much physical exercise counts as movement? Um, we've had, does physical exercise count as movement? I would say yes, but how much? Like, if you're in a boardroom and you need to move around, is squeezing a stress ball enough? Is it pacing enough? What
And
is.
yeah, and it really depends on everybody's nervous system. But in my view, I look forward to times when we can actually increase those normatives so that we can find healthy ways to move. So to that effect, if you're working with an activity, you need to build in those natural breaks. If you are on Zoom calls or if you are sitting in a sedentary space, you need to find natural ways of moving, and ideally even 10 minutes of hard uh, anaerobic activity is going to help. So again, another piece of research is that 3 minutes of intense aerobic activity will increase your sort of your cognitive support. So doing a 3 minute bout of jumping jacks, burpees, something with big muscle groups is going to help you learn and focus better.
Yeah, I've heard things like before an interview or before a big meeting, walk up a flight or two of stairs to the meeting. So you get that blood flowing, and, that stuff kicks in about 10 minutes after with your brain and
Mhm.
so that kind of stuff. Will, do you have any other tips when you're in a waiting room for somebody to activate that where you can't necessarily do jumping jacks or.
Well, breathing's a big one. putting your hands and rubbing your quads, like the top of your legs, helps you calms your nervous system. Putting your hands and squeezing your arms calms your nervous system. There's so many. Just shaking your hands or even shaking to the side calms your nervous system. There are things that are there's so many movements that work with our physical body that calm our nervous system. Other ones are just like the breath work, or putting your hands on your belly and just focusing on the rising and falling of your breath. Feeling listening to your breath.
One more technique if I'm asking for, sorry. Since a lot of startups are here, they have to pitch live on stage. So they can't necessarily put their thing on their throat or do anything because everyone's looking at their. Any tips when you're standing there on stage to calm yourself?
Yeah, well, you it's hard to see someone just sitting stationary and or standing stationary. So you're helping you, and you're helping the engagement if you're moving. So move your body. Only speak when you've got the punctuation is when you're staying stable. Yeah. I'm fortunate being an Italian, so my hands are going anyways. But yeah, engage your body. And in those pitches where you're in front of people, um, there's lots of opportunity for shame, right? So our body, and again, it's hardwired. We have this fear of speaking in public or because when we're out in the savannas and you're in an empty space, your prey is looking at you. So you are essentially shining out yourself as a menu item. And so, we have that hard wiring. So if you're doing presentations and you are on a stage, you need to rehearse, and you need to ideally, I would say, make sure you are moving.
So build movement into your pitch is a good idea. You don't
Yes.
necessarily have a lot of room, so you want to make 2-3 steps. Do this 2-3 steps. Point at the screen. 2-3 steps as part of your pitch, because now your movement. I like to do that in the boardroom too. I say there's a lot of tension going on, so when you're excited about something, jump to the screen and show it. Jump to the whiteboard and write it down, because that takes a lot of that tension away. It
Yeah.
gives you something to do. As well as showing people where you're excited. So if you can build some of that in your pitch, how many here, hands up if you blah blah blah, is
Yeah.
usually a good start. Now everybody's moving a little bit. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff helps.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you taking the time today. If people wanted to find out more and get a hold of you, where would they go?
You would go to www.creativeedgeconsulting.com. I have a podcast, there's articles, cheat sheets. I have some mental health minutes. I have my webinar coming up on September the 3rd, so next Wednesday. And coming soon, I'm going to have a conflict bluster workbook that will be free and accessible on my website.
And what is the name of your podcast?
Can we all just get along?
Can we all just get along? Great. Thank you again for taking the time today. It's been wonderful having you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Join us tonight at 7 or over the next couple of days. We got lots of stuff going on. So we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.